Yes.
because I can get so caught up in feeling like I need to do more. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, girl, you know, and then I just have these moments for myself where I'm like, Jesus, like where I was a year ago, where I was 2 years ago, like when I put it into that perspective, I'm like, wow, I'm so proud of you. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, people say this all the time, and I love that sentiment. Like, you're doing this for little you, because
Yeah.
little you didn't have the freedom or the resources or the access to be able to cultivate the life that she wanted. And so you're able to do all of that now because she couldn't do that before. And you're, you know, you're like unpacking family trauma and like not letting that be your future or your life or the way that you communicate with other people. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing all of this now because I couldn't do this before. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't old enough. I wasn't brave enough to do all the things that I'm doing now, you
Wow.
know, and that makes me like really proud of myself.
So welcome to the Tea On, where we sip tea and we talk about things.
Yes.
Things that matter. This is actually, it's water. It's not tea.
Yeah, I'm drinking water too. Good. I'm glad.
We love hydration. Yes, queens. And I am here with someone who just like, on a personal level, is one of my favorite human beings. And I'm not just saying that, like, just genuinely, I think I see myself so loudly in you. And you also in the same way ground me and empower me. You expand me. And on a human level outside of that, I think you are just a light that is going to expand so many people, just in the way that you stand in your essence. It has nothing to do with what you are doing, but rather the way that you are so married to yourself. And so I'm gonna give you some room to yourself and all of that. But I want to, no, actually, yeah, go ahead, Miss Ciara. Let the people know who you are.
Oh my gosh. I'm Ciara. I'm 26. I'm an actor. I'm a writer. I'm a blogger. I'm a podcaster. I'm all the things. Yeah, and I just kind of, I am so married to the idea of making space for myself and getting to know myself that that's really where I'm at on a daily basis. And I feel like the more I can know myself, the more I can have compassion for other people, the more I can be more understanding for other people. So I feel like I'm just kind of on this path of making space and being kind to myself.
And you're on that journey very out loud. Very vulnerably. You're showing the beautiful parts of it, the more difficult parts of it. And that was why I wanted you to be the person that I have a conversation surrounding self-worth with, because I think obviously we all kind of go through our seasons and our chapters, and it's very evident to me that right now I'm really being introduced to what does it mean to build a life that is centered on aligning with my self-worth and honoring my self-worth in every area. And I was like listening to an interview with Tracy Ellis Ross and Oprah, which was like life-changing.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Yeah. And I was like, I need to have this conversation, but like for our generation, and I couldn't think of a better person to have it with than you, because like I was saying before, you can tell that your journey with this is very authentic and it's very raw. And I think we are watching you sort of smell the flowers that have bloomed from you, honoring your self-worth. And with that being said, the very first question that I have is, on this journey, what were kind of like the limiting beliefs and the humps that you had to overcome in order to arrive in this place of self-worth?
Yeah, I struggle so much with like not thinking I'm deserving of something, but mostly that I'm not good enough to have something. And I obviously a lot of that comes from having a career in the arts. And for as long as I can remember, I've been in like conservatory style training with people who are super talented and super wonderful. And if I'm not aligned with myself, that becomes more of an obstacle for me rather than something that inspires me, right? Like, as opposed to it being like, oh, I get to be surrounded by all these people that I get to learn from and grow from. Yeah. It becomes, I don't deserve to be in the room with these people. I'm not as special as these people. And I feel like that's been on the journey. That's the journey that I've been on for a very long time. Like allowing myself to say that I deserve to be in this room, that I'm worthy of this experience and of being around these people. So my limiting belief has always kind of been like, well, if this person is amazing, I can't be as amazing as that person. Like there's not enough room for all of us to be amazing. You know, it's definitely like this concept, like there can only be one, especially as a Black girl. You know, there's not enough room for all of us to be unique. Like, you know what I mean? And so that's definitely my number one limiting belief. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And it's so funny because like, I know so many people can relate to that, especially because every time I feel like the emotion of envy, I think it's something we are so uncomfortable with looking at. And it comes in many forms, right? It comes like from self-comparison and not feeling like enough. But I think anytime I feel a sense of like they're experiencing something that I want to experience, or they deserve to be in this room and I don't, I get really excited because I feel like it's an invitation to look at what is that reflecting about an inner belief that I've inherited. And so especially you bringing up just being a Black woman in general, what do you think were like the societal programmings that you had to kind of undo?
Yeah, so like I went to school with predominantly white people,
right?
Or white passing people.
Right.
A lot of them were Cuban and Colombian, but they were white passing.
Right.
And then I went to college. I was the only Black girl in my class, and my school is so elite. Like it's so like, you know, they only accept a certain amount of people, and we all have to audition to get there. It's one of the best schools in the country. And I kind of went in with this idea of like, oh, I'm the only Black girl. Like that must mean I'm really talented, or like that must be some really great thing for me because it's just me. And I realized while I was there, it was more harmful to me because I felt like I represented the entire Black woman demographic. Like I always give this example. We were doing like Disney songs and I felt obligated to sing Princess and the Frog. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, well, nobody in here can sing Princess Tiana, so it has to be me.
Right.
And Almost There is a great song, but for me as an actor, I didn't feel like it was actionable enough. I was like, nothing is going on in this song, and I really wanted to sing Part of Your World. And I sang Almost There, and I like, you know, I gave it my all, I did it. And my teacher actually pulled me over and he was like, are you okay? Like, do you not want to do this? And I was like, not really, but like, does it show? And like everyone in my class was like, yeah, that was like the most like what's going on performance you've ever had. And I wasn't even trying. Like I'm a very like, you know, my mom's always like, you're an actor, learn how to act. But I get into situations where I cannot hide how I am feeling. Like my emotions are so thick that I cannot pretend. And that was a situation where I was like, I feel a responsibility to sing this song, and I was not connected to it and I didn't want to. And after having a conversation with my teacher was like, absolutely, like I wanted to sing Part of Your World. And he was like, you can sing that. You don't have to sing this. And I was like, okay, but do you understand why I feel that way? Like there's no one else is gonna sing this. And I'm wondering if it's gonna look bad on me because I didn't want to choose that. So it's always been like this thing of like being the only, and then feeling like you have this pressure and this responsibility to do that. And also feeling like you have to be better than everybody else because you're the only, and it means something that you're the only one that got into the class. And like that also was very harmful to me as well. Yeah.
Holy shit. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like that's a perspective that many people haven't even had the chance to sit with. And it's important to recognize that it's not your weight to carry being like, you know, sort of like this like mass representation just because you're in a room. But it's also worth noting that you are opening so many doors for girls who do look like you to stand in their authenticity by saying like, you can sing whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? It's honoring your truth.
Absolutely. So. That's how I feel about the show that I'm in now.
Yeah.
In the show that I'm in now, I'm the only Black girl on the stage.
I know.
And I battle with like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's not my responsibility, but as I'm growing into it, I'm like, this is a privilege and an honor to be playing this kind of role where she's smart, she's intelligent, she speaks well, she's, you know, but she's also got all of her own limiting beliefs. And I like to believe she's the only Black person in school as well. And she feels like she's got to work really hard to be seen. And I relate to that story a lot. And so I think of that as like a privilege to play that and to show those sides of that, you know? Yeah.
And you're doing so beautifully, babe. You're doing so beautifully. And so now standing in this place of like radical honesty and self-worth, what are sort of like the micro daily steps that you take to honor that, to nurture your garden?
Oh my God, so many things. I Journaling, like it's such a thing and it's so helpful. I'm currently not in therapy right now, which I plan to be in therapy, but it's so funny because my journaling process is like, okay, well, if I was talking to my therapist, like what would my therapist say about this? Like it goes back to what were you saying about like envy, if I'm feeling that emotion, I kind of go about it in a way that's like, well, what is triggering me? Why do I feel this way about that person? Because I know always the baseline is me. It's never about that person. It's always how I'm interpreting it, how I'm receiving it. And then I have to have an honest conversation with myself about why I'm perceiving it. So that's really my like daily step is like taking inventory of my feelings and understanding why I have them. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like what a beautiful way to word that, especially because it's same. Like obviously I'm the strongest advocate for therapy, but I'm also currently not in it and I plan to be. But I think it's also something that you can approach kind of cyclically and practice holding yourself in the time that you don't have that soundboard. And so journaling for me is also that. And it requires a level of self-awareness, of like radical self-honesty. And I think that if you are in a place where you are working on building and deepening your sense of self-worth, it does require honesty with self and having to have those uncomfortable conversations with yourself, because at the end of the day, every experience, every emotion, every person that greets you in your life is a mirror. And if they're invoking some sort of uncomfortable emotion, it's something that is an invitation to look at within yourself. And so you have to sit with that, babe. Beautiful.
But and what's interesting about that too is I feel like I've been doing that for so long, and now being in a relationship, it's fascinating the way that I find that like my initial reaction is to work through things on my own, because I know myself and I know why I'm reacting this way, and I'm like, I know, like this is why this is happening. And having a partner who like genuinely is like, let's talk about that, like literally it's like, let's unpack why you felt that way, and me wanting to put this wall up of being like, well, I know why I acted that way, and like not wanting the extra feedback and not wanting to ask for help from anybody is also something that I'm constantly working through. Like of course I feel like I know myself, right? But there's also the self that is perceived. There's the way I perceive myself, and there's the way that I'm being perceived. And I think for all of us type A people, it's so important that we're open with that perspective, because that's how we learn that like everything is not that serious. Like literally your intro to me, I'm like in my body, I'm like cringing. I was like, does she really think that about me? You know what I mean?
Imagine, like, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't even touch the surface of, no, but totally 100%.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? I think, and that's why it's important to have honest conversations with other people so that we can get out of our heads, because in our brains, it's like do or die. It's like everybody's thinking this about me when no one's thinking about us at all, you know? So it's like,
oh my gosh. I've been really sitting with that idea too. Thank you for bringing that up, because I'm like, sometimes I think my self-sufficiency can sort of manifest as a block of like, I don't know, me allowing myself to just, like receive feedback, sit with feedback, even care about like, it's 100%. I think it's kind of hyper independent. So
and that's also the thing about like self-love and self-care, and like being so avid about those things can in the long run be very harmful, because we create these houses where it's just me, and we're not thinking about anybody else. We're not taking anybody else into our lives. It's like, well, I need to do this and this and this because this is how I become that girl. And a lot of the time, that girl you don't see her with friends and relationships and going out and drinking. Like you see her like, well, I have to journal and I have to do this and I have to do that. And that in the long run can be really harmful for all of us, because it creates a very egotistical or egocentric life where everything is that much more effective to us because we're thinking that the world revolves around us.
Yes. Oh my God. And that there's a version of us we need to arrive to. And so I'm curious to know how you find the balance within that, because I find that my level of self-awareness and my self-care is it's gorgeous and it's saved me. But I was doing this like somatic session with someone, and I had this like, I experienced like a form of like loss, and I was like, well, I know this is happening to me because I'm learning this lesson and and like, she just kind of looked at me and she was like, do you know the difference between sort of like, you know, healing, but also like fixing a way of feeling? And I think we can get really addicted to our self-care and deconstructing every lesson and every emotion that we are sort of removed from what it means to feel things and be human. So like, do you find that you have to balance that at all?
Yeah, Absolutely. I'm so not individual. What's the word I'm looking for? Like I love being alone. I love my alone time. I have created a world in which I feel like I can really be my best self and like do my thing by being by myself. But I noticed that after a long period of time, it's bad for me to do that. And it makes everything more serious than it actually is, right? Like everything is just more, everything weighs more to me. And I feel like we can become addicted to the process of getting to this place that we think we're supposed to be in without feeling like the place that we're at is great. Like even with my body, like I'm like, great, yeah, I worked out today. And I have a hard time detaching myself from like, okay, but if I do this every single day for the next 3 weeks, then I'll feel like this. You know what I mean? And I'm like, no. You did it today. You did it today, you got out of bed today, and that's great. Like, and just allowing myself to exist in today and not this, well, everything's gonna be great in 3 weeks because I'm doing all of these building blocks to get me to this 3-week destination. That can be really hard, like debilitating for me to like be in my moment and to exist because I'm thinking about like how everything that I'm doing for myself today is gonna be beneficial for me in the future, which is great, but it's also depriving me from my today.
You can get so addicted to self-betterment that you don't you don't even reap the rewards of the investment you've already made in yourself and the arrival of who you are in this given moment. I wonder if that's also your Aquarius moon, right? You have an Aquarius moon.
Yes.
Because I'm an Aquarius sun and I'm a Sag rising, you're a Sag sun, and I'm like, literally, I have built such a comfort in existing on this island. My own company is my kryptonite, and I find that, like you said, things weigh heavier when you are your only soundboard. And until I make the effort to be surrounded by what is outside of my control, like, going to dinners with friends and like being in situations where I'm not controlling because I'm in a very like, from this time to this time I journal and then I move my body and I kind of have to be uncomfortable a little bit.
Yes, I literally right before this call I decided to change my day because my roommates were like, it's really gorgeous outside, like we're gonna go lay by the beach, and I had this whole plan that I was like, well, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna do that, and like if I have time I'll lay by the beach. And I was like, no, you can have freedom in the form. You can go hang out with them at the beach, like allowing like a change of commitment, a change of situation into my life is amazing, because then I'm like, I'm just existing. I'm just living. Like I don't have to commit to anything. We feel like there's one way to commit to our best self, and that's not it at all. It looks different for everybody. And like just being able to say yes to this opportunity that's going to bring me joy, that has nothing to do with bettering myself other than bettering my mental health, but it doesn't have anything to do with like physically bettering myself. It's like a really strong thing to do.
Surrendering control, honey. Oh my God, 100%. And so I'm curious to know, when you see like the narrative of like honoring our self-worth and then pouring into our confidence, especially like how Instagram has kind of sold it to us, and how this at times diluted form of like self-care that shows up online shows up, how do you think, or rather, what do you think are like the harder, more shadowy parts of it that people don't really acknowledge?
Yeah, well, this reminds me, are you watching Euphoria?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay,
I try not to.
Yeah, you try not to.
Because it's so heavy, but I'm like,
it's so heavy. It's on Sunday nights. Like, this should not be on the Lord's Day.
Sacred day. And like,
the rest day.
I'm crying. Yes, I watched. Tell me.
Yeah, and you remember that episode with Barbie's character?
Right.
Where, all the influencers in her room, and they're like, you just gotta love yourself, babe. You just gotta love yourself. And she's like, you're not listening to me. I don't love myself. I don't know how to, and that was like, so I perceived that and I was like, I understand that. I see that. And so much of social media has become saturated with, you love yourself anyway. You get up and choose yourself. You get up and choose joy. You do this, you do that, you do that, whatever. And sometimes it can be incredibly inspiring, especially when the person looks like you, or especially when the person's going through exactly what you're going through. And there are other times where it can be harmful because it makes it look like it's this one size fits all situation, and you cannot get there. and you start to feel like there's something wrong with you. And in the interview afterward, Sam Levinson was like, you know, there's so many people on the internet who are just giving their advice and nobody asked them for their advice. And I heard that too. I took that and I perceived that. I said, I hear that. I understand that. Like, there's so many of us, myself included, that I am not educated in any way. I'm not a therapist, right? And I am telling people what works for me.
Yeah.
And there's a weight to that, and there's a responsibility to that, right? That you don't want it to be like, you just got to do this and you'll be happy like me. Like, no. And I feel like I'm so aware of that. And especially with that episode, I was like, exactly. Like, I want when people come to my page for them to feel like I always say, Queen Made of Light is about people finding the light within themselves. Yeah. Like, my love language is having conversations with my friends that leads them to open doors inside of themselves. Yeah. It's not me being this like bright sunlight that's changing everybody's lives. I have enough care to ask them the right questions, to spend time with them. And so they're like, oh yeah, well that makes me feel like this. And they are getting to know themselves better because somebody wanted to get to know them and make space for them. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to do, because I recognize that it's not a one size fits all thing. It's different for everybody, and we all just have to take that time to get to know ourselves so we know how to get there. That's how I answer that.
And you answered something beautifully. And I think you brought up such an important thing, which is that I think especially in like the Instagram self-care world, it has become very like self-prophetic, and people have sort of like put themselves on these pedestals to where I have the answers on how you can love yourself. And if you like follow me and also like buy this course bundle, like whatever, you know, and it's so important to recognize, to honor and be brave enough to share every layer of yourself. And if you're going to talk about, you know, how you cared for yourself on this day that you're feeling really sunshiny, embrace also like sharing that day where you feel like shit, because if not, people are going to watch this like sort of this false representation of the way you are choosing to be perceived rather than the human within you. And that whole like unsolicited advice thing, I have to sit with as well, because I'm like, in what part am I just sharing my truth, and another part can I be seen as someone who's coming off as someone who like, here's the answer, rather than someone who's kind of holding your hand and experiencing it alongside you. So that's huge. So in the Tracy Ellis Ross and interview,
was this from years ago or was it new?
Years ago.
Like, I know, I watched it.
Yeah, I
podcasted it. Yeah,
of course. No, of course you would.
Yeah.
So in it, I think it was like 2019 or 20, but like she talked about how she sort of shifted her affirmations, Tracy, from like I am to may I. And it's one of those things that kind of like, at least on a cerebral level, was more of an invitation to walk towards feeling something rather than trying to convince yourself of feeling something that you don't in that given moment. So like if you're telling yourself, I am beautiful, but you just feel fucking ugly. It's kind of like you're looking in the mirror and you're trying to convince yourself of something that just isn't sitting right. Whereas like, may I walk towards allowing myself to feel beautiful as I arrive. It's such a different invitation, and it's such a gentle way to like walk you towards this becoming, because the truth is, I think standing in a place that I see you standing in is not something that happens overnight, and it's something that fluctuates, and it's something that you have to be gentle with yourself on the journey of, and understanding that like growth takes drops and steps rather than an overnight sort of becoming. So absolutely. And it's funny because we're talking so much about how healing it is to stand in the essence of who you are in this now, but I am curious to know if you reflect on the ways in which like past you is so excited at who you arrived at, and like how future you is so grateful at who you're standing in now. Tell me.
I'm getting like emotional thinking about that.
I love you.
I need to think about that so much more. You know what I mean? Like that, when I just think about that provides so much comfort to me, because I can get so caught up in feeling like I need to do more. And then I'm like, girl, you know, and then I just have these moments for myself where I'm like, Jesus, like where I was a year ago, where I was 2 years ago, like when I put it into that perspective, I'm like, wow, I'm so proud of you. Like, you know, and you know, people say this all the time, and I love that sentiment. Like, you're doing this for little you, because little you didn't have the freedom or the resources or the access to be able to cultivate the life that she wanted. And so you're able to do all of that now because she couldn't do that before. And you're, you know, you're like unpacking family trauma and like not letting that be your future or your life or the way that you communicate with other people. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing all of this now because I couldn't do this before. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't old enough. I wasn't brave enough to do all the things that I'm doing now. Wow. You know, and that makes me like really proud of myself.
Holy shit. And you can give yourself permission to be proud of yourself, because I find that I sometimes don't give myself permission to enjoy
because it's not something you can like, you know,
right, exactly. And then I think you sort of build this narrative, like you were saying, like, well, if I continue on this path for the next 3 weeks, then I'll be in an even better version of myself, that like that kind of exhale. And there is such a liberation in like just for 1 second sitting and looking around and looking at the people you're suddenly surrounded by, the experiences that you're getting to have, the health that you're standing in on an inward and internal level, and just like, this is all because I decided to be brave, and I decided to honor my full potential, and I decided to live for the younger version of me that didn't have the resources and the access, and also just like I guess the dialogue of what it meant to stand in your worth. You're getting to do that for her. And so on that same breath, you know, what are the decisions and the changes in the inner dialogue that you're making right now that you think future you is really going to benefit from?
I am just releasing anything that doesn't want me. I'm such a planner, and I have such an idea of like who I think I am and what's right for me. And like, you know, whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever it is, like, I do believe that there's a bigger plan for me than I have for myself. And I have to trust that. And I have to trust that maybe something that I think is going to make me the happiest is actually not going to make me that happy. And something else is actually going to make me happier. And just the idea of releasing is like my life's challenge, I think. Like, I think I'll be struggling with that for the rest of my life, you know, always navigating this thing where like I don't have all the answers, or I don't know the thing that's going to make me me, you know, and being open to any possible thing. And also it in a positive way with that, it's, I think, gets rid of like limited beliefs. Like I liked like what you're saying with the Tracee Ellis Ross with her affirmations, that started making me think about this affirmation that I heard from You Are a Badass, which is like the only self-help book I've ever read in my life. And I recommend it to everyone. I travel it on tour with me. I have notes in it. It's the only book I have. And one of hers was like, let's see what I can get away with. And I love it because it's so like, yeah, I can do that. If I can do that, I can do this. Like I have some goals that I want, or some things that I want to happen to me in the very near future. And my mindset around them is like, why can't I have both? Why can I have both? Like, why, you know? And then, you know, I'm watching so many people in my life who I know, and people who I don't know, who like all of their dreams are coming true. Like at this very moment, all of their dreams are coming true. And I'm like, so why can't all my dreams come true? Like there's no reason that like I can't be on cloud 9 like that girl is on cloud 9. You know, like, so yeah, I'm also just kind of like, yeah, if I let go, there's also that chance that like all these amazing other things that I don't even know exist right now could happen to me, because I'm not gripped onto one thing that I think is going to make me the happiest person alive.
Yeah. Oh my God. Imagine thinking that you're like a better designer than the universe. Like, like, you think this is as good as it gets? Just wait.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm just excited to witness it and to be on this journey with you. I think you are one of my expanders. I'm in this program. It's called like To Be Magnetic, and it talks about like just how to sort of heighten your magnetism. And I'm not one to do programs because I'm like, nobody knows better than myself.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know, there's something about it that I really gravitated towards. And they talk about how it's so important to surround yourself with people that you see yourself in, that look like you, and that are sort of inviting in these experiences because of their level of self-worth and magnetism. And like standing in their dreams and allowing that to give you permission to say, not like, well, how come she has it and I don't, but rather like, oh my God, it's going great for her. It can go great for me too. You're definitely one of those for me. So with that being said, last question. If there's anyone who's watching or listening to this that recognizes the fact that maybe they aren't fully standing in a place that honors their self-worth and they kind of want to gently walk towards it, what are some first steps you can take to invite them there?
My first thought was like, I hate to yoga with Adrian this, but find what feels good. Like, find find what feels good. I think, you know, and allow yourself to surprise yourself. Like with the internet, we can become so saturated with what we think is the thing that's going to make us feel good, because this is the thing that everybody's doing and this is the thing that is creating results. But really allowing ourselves to be surprised by what we like and what makes us feel good, and not needing it to make sense to anybody. I say this on my podcast all the time because I struggle with it too. Everything that I say on my podcast is something that I struggle with. And one of those things is, you know, this idea of like having a brand, this idea of being palpable to somebody, I think can be super harmful, because it's also very limiting, right? Like, well, if I'm going to be this person, that means I have to do all these things so that everybody knows that I'm this person. And that can make us really do a disservice to the expansiveness of who we are, because we're like, well, this is my lane, and like I don't do those other things, you know? And I think that can be super harmful. And so for somebody who's like taking those beginning steps to feeling at peace with who they are and to discover who they are, I think it's about like taking off the hat and just being like, okay, we'll see what happens. Like, say yes to everything. What do I like? What do I don't like? And standing firm in that, and like just allowing yourself to surprise yourself.
Oh my God, I love that. The way I need to like watch this back and journal on it. Because I think especially when I first started to get into like spirituality and taking on a leadership role within it, I felt like it began to both expand me, but also like contain me to a point where I was kind of demonizing other parts of myself that didn't feel like fit that narrative. So I think it was life-changing the day that I gave myself permission to be all of me, and to not let any part of my shadow, of my inner child, of my grunge, feel like it tainted any part of me that is so sunshiny and light, and know that like just there's so many parts of you that can exist in juxtaposition, and it's at your benefit to embrace all that you are, and to stand in that loudly, and to create from that, to bask in that, to sit with that, to reflect on that, but ultimately to just be all of you and allow who you are standing in right now to shed its skin and be something different tomorrow. So with that being said, babe, you are just incredible, and I adore you. And so please let the people know where they can find you, how they can consume your content, all of those things.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Ciara Alyse Harris. You can subscribe to my blog, queenmadeoflight.org, where I have a newsletter that comes out weekly. And I have a podcast called Queen Made of Light, the podcast, and episodes come out every other Friday, and you can subscribe and leave me a review.
I just want to plug and say that I was on one of those episodes and we talked about energy.
You sure were. I need to share that, because that was when I was doing my Black History Month. But what's so funny about that is like, I only have interviewed Black women, and I was like, let's do a Black women series, and I already did Black women. I was like, okay, whatever. And you were one of those people, so I was like, I need to share that.
I love being Black, right?
I love it.
I love you. And thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me. I hope you guys took nectar from it. Feel free to subscribe, Instagram, all of the things, and go stand in your worth, girl.
Yes.